Today we're focusing on finding Jesus in the midst of our weakness. As St. Paul wrote in his second letter to the Corinthians, "Therefore, to keep me from being too elated, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, to keep me from being too elated. 3 times I appealed to the Lord about this, that it would leave me, but he said, 'My grace is sufficient for you. Power is made perfect in weakness.'" That's an odd statement. Power is made perfect in weakness. It seems like a contradiction. We would think that the phrase should be, "Power is made perfect in strength." That's not what it says. He's talking about this thorn in the flesh. That's where we get this phrase, "He's a thorn in my side." That's where it comes from in the Bible. Now, we don't know what was going on for Paul when he wrote this. We don't know whether it was some kind of physical ailment or an injury that was afflicting him. Maybe there was some kind of cancerous growth on his skin. We don't know. Maybe it was some kind of weakness on the inside. Maybe some kind of temptation that was really hard for him to resist. But we do know that he prayed for this thorn to be removed. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. He was very persistent with his prayer. But God's response was, "My grace is enough for you. Power is made perfect in weakness." This week on Facebook, I posed the question, what is your weakness? And how have you experienced God's power in the midst of your weakness? One Facebook responder gave a list of different ways that we experience weakness, including depression, lack of clarity, financial fear, stress from parenting, and broken relationships. She said that experiencing weakness feels like God is closing a door and not opening a window fast enough. You'll see at the end of your pew, on either end, there are some slips of white paper. And I want you to take one and pass it down. And take those nifty little pieces, those nifty little pencils that you have here in the pews. And I want you to just take a moment and think, what is my weakness? And I want you to write it down on this slip of paper. Now, don't put your name. This is not confession time. I just want you to put a word or a phrase, write it down, and then I want you to fold it up tight. You don't have to show this to anybody. I just want you to make your thorn in the flesh so that you can see it and you can hold it in your hand. Okay, just take a moment and think, what is the thorn in my flesh? I'm going to do the same. Hold it up nice and tight so that nobody can see what you wrote. And as you're doing that, I want you to listen as Mike gives his testimony about where he has experienced God's power in the midst of his weakness. Now, Mike is one of the biggest, strongest guys that I know. I remember the first time that I came to this church and I greeted him, I thought, oh my gosh, this church has a bouncer. But the more I got to know Mike over the years, I learned that he has a very deep faith. And it's a faith that has been tested in times of weakness. And he has shared with me that he's learned a thing or two about what it means to experience God's grace and power made perfect in his weakness. So I'm going to ask Mike to come up here. Let's see, do I have Hey, can we have the handheld mic? Why don't you come on up and you can start from here and I'll bring the handheld mic down for you.
I'm not too sure I need a mic, but I'm a little more comfortable just like walking around because this is how I do my profession. Can everybody hear me without actually standing here? Okay, well then for my first number I would like to sing. Pastor Shade's going, wait, this we didn't talk about
that one.
Anyway, Pastor Schade and I have become very good friends through a lot of breakfast conversations. It's really been pretty cool. So, and I've been able to talk to her about a lot of different things. Well, we kind of talked about, I'm going to say that I think weaknesses can also be derived from disappointments. So, and I think one of the hardest things for me to do, I mean, I can talk to people really easy because that's what I do. I'm actually my profession is a certified sports specialist, and I work with kids, but I'm going to tell you how I got to that point through disappointments. Okay, so growing up, I was certainly an enthusiast in performing in athletics, and only at the junior high level, and I was an enthusiast in wrestling and football, and loved it. Well, not paying attention to my mom and dad, not going somewhere where they told me not to, I had a very serious leg injury. Okay, so I had that, I recovered, tried to perform sports again, didn't work. Doctor finally said, if you don't stop, you're not going to walk. Well, that was a no-brainer. So as much as I wanted to be around sports, I was very disappointed with that. So my dad was a very good golfer. And he says to me, he says, why don't you start playing golf? I'm going, what? I was like, I'm not going to call my dad a sissy because he'd have knocked my head off. So I just sort of said, no, I'm not into that. But what I did have a chance to do is become a member of a physical fitness team at the high school that I had attended, and we were actually pretty good. We competed in Hershey Stadium, sponsored by the state police, and we competed against other schools. Now, we don't have that anymore, unfortunately. That was a great program to be in shape. Well, I actually trained with the wrestling team. I wasn't allowed to wrestle, but I was allowed to train. So I was able to do that. But after that was over, it was over. So there I am again without being involved in athletics. So I decided to caddy for my dad. And I'm going to myself, you know what? I think I can play this game. Because it was my only outreach to be involved in an athletic team. I mean, that was, or an athletic event. So I started to play, and I know Dad gave me a set of clubs, and so I'd bat them around the backyard. We didn't have a whole lot of houses, but a new garage was going up. And when I started to hit the ball really good, I put one right through the window of the brand new garage. And my dad goes, yeah, but did you hit it good? I go, yeah, I hit it pretty good. Yeah, so he says, we'll fix the window. Don't worry about that. I said, okay. So we got it going. I started to play, and I played, and actually started to play pretty well. And now I'm really getting into it because when I first started to play, of course, wasn't very good. But as the improvement came along, I just started to practice. I was eating this up because now I'm back involved in an athletic competition of some sort. So eventually, I was approached about maybe turning pro. I said, yeah. So this is pretty cool. So my dad says, I think we got to get you some lessons from a top-notch PGA professional, and that's what we did. So I took these lessons, got really good, and it was time to make a move. So I signed up for the satellite tour in Central Florida, got a sponsor from a gentleman a clothing salesman in the Central Florida. He was going to be my sponsor. I was all set to go. Was ready to give up my amateur status and was ready to turn pro. We didn't have any snow on the ground in January, and so I was up at the Milton Golf Course on the practice area hitting practice balls. And I got this weird pain in my right hand. I'm going, what the heck is this? So I quit, and I went home. I said, got this pain going on. I said, I hope it's just like tendonitis. So I gave it a week, went back up. First couple shots brought me to my knees. Well, that was it. Once you turn pro, you're a pro, and it takes a while to get your amateur status back. So I called Florida and said, I'm pulling out. Called my sponsor, said I'm not going to be playing. So again, another disappointment. It took approximately a year to find my fracture in what was described as the hook of the hamate bone in the right hand, lodged behind the ulnar nerve, and there's no x-rays or MRIs that could actually pick that up. So we went to New York City, and I was seen by a doctor who had performed the same operation on 2 New York Yankees, Roger Maris and Rusty Staub. So if you're Yankee fans, you certainly know who I'm talking about. So we got the picture. They performed the operation in Lewisburg. Went through my rehabilitation, my repair, never played good enough again I played good, but I didn't play. Big difference between being a good amateur and a successful professional. Big difference. So that was that. But I continued to play. Now, after that, though, I got into a little more weightlifting myself, just because. I always felt like I wanted to be in some sort of shape, and so I continued with that. And my brother-in-law, Ted, head football coach at Warrior Run, gave me an opportunity to work in the weight room with the football players. I'm going, yeah. So here's another kind of a little bit. I didn't know how that was going to go, but I thought it was a great opportunity, so I did. And it went really well. And kids responded very well. The injury percentages started to come down, and we did good. We had fun. It was a blast being with the kids. Well, after about 5 years of that, a local hospital started to teach me a little bit of injury care and treatment because I was so involved in this and I loved it so much. I had a passion to just work athletically. So they taught me some sport medicine stuff, and I took a couple tests, went to clinics, and then ended up being certified in sport injury care and treatment. So then I got into that. So if I would have become a professional player, I wouldn't have had this opportunity. So I love my job. Working with kids is so much fun. Boy, I could stand here for 2 hours and just tell you stories about, but I won't do that. Of course, James going, no, don't. But I think what the whole ending of the story is, my disappointments, which of course would be like a weakness. I'm going to say that. Am I kind of correct with that? Turned out to be one of my strengths. And my strengths, of course, I love working with kids. I'm doing this a long time. Now, I don't think they like me sometimes. Do you, Dalton? No. See, they don't always like me because of what I make them do once in a while, but I always tell them, but I always will like you. And that's how I ended up. So, praise God that I do what I do. And that's how this whole thing turned into me being a trainer of kids. And presently I'm working at 2 colleges, 2 high schools, and the head trainer for the Allegheny Christian Athletic Association. So that's what I do, and I'm very pleased with that. It's a great job. So Thank you very much.
Thank you. So here's the thing. Mike literally experienced a pain in the wrist, which was like a thorn in the flesh. And if you get a chance after the service, ask to see his scar. He'll show you the scar on his wrist. It was a career-ending injury. He would no longer be able to pursue his dream of being a professional player. But through this weakness, God's power was made perfect in Mike. He has touched the lives of probably 1,000 adults and kids over the course of his career. As a sports trainer, he has helped people to avoid injury and recover from injuries. Mike understands these kinds of injuries on a very personal level because he went through it. And he knows how important it is to keep your body in shape and play sports the right way. So God's power of healing was made perfect through Mike's weakness. Now, remember, we're not saying that God caused this injury for Mike so that he would follow the path of sports medicine. That's not how God works. God is not like some master game player in the sky deciding to afflict some people in order to affect a certain outcome, no matter how positive. If that were the case, then God would just be arbitrary, manipulative, and cruel. That is not who God is. God is not up in the sky making things happen. God is here below with us, among us, accompanying us, no matter what we face, no matter what circumstances arise, and creating something new out of that weakness and brokenness. When I was a hospital chaplain, I had the occasion to visit a woman in the oncology wing, and she was facing a recurrence of cancer. She was very frustrated, just like Paul, because she had prayed fervently, not 3 times, but countless, thousands of times over the course of her first bout of cancer, that it would resolve itself and it would not come back. And lots of people were praying for her all over the world. And she had this strong confidence that God would keep the cancer away. So when the test came back positive, that she had another recurrence of cancer, she was understandably shaken. She was doubting the power of prayer. She was doubting her own faith, and she was doubting God. And as I sat with her in her hospital room, I remembered this verse from 2 Corinthians. My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in your weakness. And I asked her, I said, well, can you imagine any way that God's power might be made perfect in your weakness, even in the midst of this illness? She thought for a while, and then she answered, you know, maybe if, no, maybe when I make it through this surgery, I can help other cancer patients who are facing the same thing that I am. I know there's a cancer support group here at the hospital. Maybe I can volunteer and become something like a cancer coach and help people go through what I've experienced. Because, you know, no one can understand cancer better than somebody who's been through cancer. I thought this was a very wise and faith-filled response. I don't know what happened to the woman because she left the hospital and my chaplaincy ended, but I feel certain that God found a way for that divine power to be made perfect in her weakness. That's what Mike has found over the course of his life. Power is made perfect even in weakness. Notice God did not magically make Mike's problem disappear the way he would have wanted it to after the injury. But he has learned that when we talk with others, when we share and receive help from others, It's like those sticks being bundled together, even when they're broken. When you combine enough of them, there is strength through the power of God that together they cannot be broken. Every fault, every sin, every failure, every affliction that is among us here in your little piece of paper, all of this is an opportunity for us to accompany each other on the path to embody Christ's presence for another, to be that compassion and that grace. So here's what I want you to do. As we sing the sermon hymn, I'm going to walk around with the basket, and I'm going to invite you to make an offering of your weakness. An offering of your weakness. I want you to put your folded up piece of paper into the basket as I come around. No one's going to open it. Remember, don't put your name. And at the end of the hymn, we're going to pray together over our weaknesses. We're going to pray for God's grace to be sufficient for you, whatever you're going through in your life right now. For God's power to be made perfect in your weakness, so that together we are like those tiny little sticks, weak by themselves, but united in strength, and we experience that power. As the Facebook responder wrote, "When I am weak, God is strong. I lean harder on God, the weaker I am. I wait patiently," okay, maybe not so patiently, but I remind myself of God's love for me. I remind myself that God is bigger than my problems. God is Jehovah Jireh, Lord Provider. Jehovah Shalom, Lord of Peace. Jehovah Sabbath, Lord of Deliverance. And I have learned that when the storm clouds roll in, I send my praises up, and it breaks apart those clouds, and blessings come down. Praise, I've never seen it fail. Offer your weakness to God and experience that power through each other, through a company, through compassion, and through love. Amen. And our hymn is 532, "Gather Us In."